the season began, a lot of people thought that Washington State would wind up on Baltic Avenue, but as they conclude the regular season against USC, both teams have a chance to land their car on Park Place and finish second as they conclude the Pac-10 regular season this afternoon. USC at Washington State at Friel Court in Pullman. This is how it lays out. Washington has beaten UCLA. Arizona has defeated Stanford. Washington State and USC go into this final regular season game playing more than likely to battle in the second round of the Pac-10 tournament this week, the winner of Washington and Arizona. So both teams will get the first day off. There is a lot of money on the table as we wind this one up in Pullman. Welcome in, along with Bob Weiss and Paul Westphal. I'm Brian Davis. Two great stories this season, and it says an awful lot in a year that's been dominated, the Pac-10, by teams that sprinkled with stellar freshmen and sophomores. Says a lot what you can do, Paul, with a veteran lineup.
Yeah, veteran lineup. It's a different definition than it used to be. It used to be a fifth-year senior or a senior, but FC does have Loddard Stewart as a senior playing a big role, and then Gabe Pruitt and Nick Young have been around long enough to be veterans.
And, you know, with Washington State, 4 out of their top 5 producers of minutes are upperclassmen, and I think that helps that team a lot.
Both sides have been doing it with defense, and ironically, it's defense that let both of them down. Paul, USC in a 15-point loss at Washington on Thursday.
Well, they pride themselves on getting back on defense and in defending the three, but here, Dentman was wide open to start the game. He kind of set the tone for them, and it seemed like after that, everybody was hitting wide open threes in the first half against the Trojans. They shot 9 out of 13 in the first half and pretty much exposed the Trojans for their worst defensive performance of the year.
UCLA was in here on Thursday night wrapping up the regular season championship with a victory over the Cougars, and the Bruins used the pick and roll, Bob, as a lethal weapon.
Right, and Washington State, again, they also are a very, very good defensive team. They've gotten to where they are now because of their great defense. They always stop penetration, not so against UCLA in the second half. 12 of the 16 shots they took inside the three-point line went in the second half. So they were on their heels all night. It's something that they've gone back, worked hard on tape. I don't expect to see it again.
Washington State under Tony Bennett won the first meeting between these teams in Los Angeles on December 30th. They hold the other guy to a Pac-10 best 58 points a game, but against the Trojans, the other guy shoots 38%. That is tops in the league again. The battle for second place. We tip it off next at Friel Court in Pullman.
Push the button.
Go! At Car Toys, we have all the latest handsets the carrier stores have. Blackberry Pearls, Crazers, Chocolates, and Blackjacks. But at Car Toys, you...
State gained a great deal of confidence with its victory at the Galen Center in December. Kyle Weaver with what turned out to be the winning basket. That was, in some respects for Tony Bennett, the launch point to the Cougars' great run that concludes here in terms of the regular season, but certainly will continue past the Pac-10 tournament and into the NCAAs. NCAA seeding is a concern of Tim Floyd's. If you lose at Washington, then at Washington State, then you give the tournament selection committee something to think about. Another change in the starting lineup for Floyd as he inserts the freshman Daniel Hackett from Downey, California, into the lineup at guard. Look for Gabe Pruitt. He got to 1,000 points at Washington on Thursday night. They got 3 guys at 1,000. Tony Bennett, look, he's got a tie on today. That is in honor of Senior Day here in Pullman. Tony Bennett has been pacing his team for the postseason with lighter workouts, and the guys feel much better about that. They've really responded, appreciate it. Antonio Chavers lost his scholarship last year, came back as a walk-on to finish up. It is Senior Day here in Pullman, so he is in the starting 5, but also take a look at guys you need to watch. How about Nick Young? Had 26 points in Seattle on Thursday night. Maybe Paul taking his game to another level here today?
He made it look easy, too, but tonight with Kyle Weaver likely guarding him, it'll be a big challenge for him to have that kind of game again.
Derek Patrick Lowe, Bob, has been in a slump, 1 of 8 shooting in here the other night, and he has been in a little bit of a valley recently.
Well, he worked very hard with Coach Bennett after practice the other day. Said he didn't get a good rhythm because he didn't get many shots against UCLA. So I think he's ready.
Well, Lowe bats the ball away, and Cowgill comes up with it for Washington State. Here is Kyle Weaver leading the Cougars at 5 rebounds, one of their leading scorers at 11 points a game. The junior out of Beloit, Washington, finding Lowe. The pass out from the elbow to Chavers, a little bit long, but an offensive rebound. Washington State had 8 of those at USC, and that made a difference in the game. It gave them 9 more field goals attempts against the Trojans.
So they like to run the clock, and they do all this motion for the first 20 seconds, and then they start looking for a shot. I guess Chavers is so excited to be starting, he shot it a little early.
Yeah, they don't quite eat as much as they used to, but they are still a little bit careful. But he has opened the floodgates a little bit on shot selection. As long as it's a good shot, he doesn't mind.
Gabe Pruitt off the miss by Weaver. Entry pass from Lodrick Stewart into the freshman Taj Gibson. Posting up Cowgill, now back outside to Nick Young, and he is long with it. Nobody home. Kyle Weaver has easy pickings for the Cougars in transition.
And it looked like they had Ivory Clark on him that time, so maybe it's not going to be Weaver right at the start.
Well, I think because SC started Daniel Hackett instead of starting a center, Taj Gibson is their only big guy, and I think that knocked the matchups around a little bit for Washington State.
Lodrick Stewart did a nice job recovering after he was screened off the play, got in the way of the shot, and so far USC, well, except with one exception, they have held Washington State to 1 shot. Now Cowgill got a hand on that as Gibson tried to lay it up off the baseline.
Well, Gibson used his quickness, and I thought he felt he got bumped on that play, but it looks like they're not going to be calling ticky-tack stuff tonight.
At least in the first half.
Well, defense so far has been the key. Tonight they're both defensive teams. The other night we saw this team play, it was a shootout the first half.
It's unbelievable the difference, the way the Trojans are attacking more deliberately. The last time they played the Cougars, it was 58-55. That might seem like a shootout compared to how this pace is.
Both teams have started a combined 0 for 6. Taj Gibson will get a chance to crack the scoreboard first as he is fouled underneath the basket by Robbie Cowgill. Gibson had 10 points and 9 rebounds at Washington. He is first in the Pac-10. Field goal percentage is 58%, but from the line, he's only 61.
That's about the same. He has the same chance of making a free throw as he does a field goal. But Taj Gibson has really been, if not the MVP for the Trojans this year, their most indispensable player. He rebounds pretty much every night, gets big blocks, and has been scoring in double figures. It's just, as a freshman, they didn't know what to expect from him. And we talk about the upper class leadership. Without Taj Gibson, those upper class guys are at the bottom of the standings this year.
Yeah, but it really helps to have that solid foundation, and then, you know, you have a freshman come in and contribute. Absolutely. Rather than putting the load on those guys.
That's a closely guarded call. 5 seconds on Taylor Richesti. Pruitt was just about in his equipment and forces the first turnover of the night by the Cougars, who normally turn it over 10 times a game.
You know, with the shot clock, I have no idea why that rule's even in the book. That rule irritates me. I want to get that changed, Bob.
I'll work on it for you.
Stewart gets away. Lowe catches up with him. Tough shot. Gibson the rebound, and he scores. Again, Gibson, the Trojans' leading rebounder at 8 a game.
That was a nice move. He took it right to Cowgill's chest. Cowgill couldn't respond, and that's what you want to do to a big man, is go right at him.
At the other end, he picks up Cowgill. Richesti.
Cowgill hasn't been in the weight room enough. Where is his chest? How can he find it?
Here's Clark.
Well, he went for the number anyway.
Okay.
Cowgill knocks it down off the glass, off the feed from the senior from Metairie, Louisiana. So Louisiana to Texas, and Washington State is on the board. Took him 3.5 minutes. And Weaver overplays it. Pruitt got a little lackadaisical. He's going to shoot 2.
Yeah, he just picked his pocket. Pruitt thought he'd have a free pass to set up the offense, and Weaver said no. And then most places this would be 2 shots, but in college basketball sometimes they won't give the guy that, even though he's going right to the basket.
Yeah, he was on the floor in the judgment of Kevin Brill, and so a fresh 35 for the Cougars. Lowe taking a look inside. Outside to Calgill. He's got a nice touch from mid-range, gets his own back, has it slapped away, but then saves it for Richesty. And he's fouled by Hackett. So a little bit of hustle by both teams pays off in this moment for the Cougars as Hackett draws the first foul.
Well, he dribbled here. It's almost like he's saying, I want a turnover. But they were fighting like crazy for the ball, and they decided that that was a foul more than the other stuff. And the Cougars got it back.
Yeah, especially when you get a rebound, all those people are still around you. You definitely don't want to be putting that ball on the floor unless you're just trying to gain balance. Sometimes you have to.
Well, Derek Lowe coming off of a game in which he shot 1 of 8 and in conference play has been shooting only 38%. Scores on the nice baseline move. Gibson responds for USC at the other end.
You may see them having a double team down there because Gibson seems to be scoring pretty easily in that post.
Clark bodied up by Nick Young. Calgill left alone for just a moment, but that mid-range shot is not falling for him. Gibson's got 5 points. Nobody else from USC has scored. We're almost 5 minutes in.
SC doesn't mind being deliberate with their offense. They will look to fast break, but Tim Floyd likes deliberate offense as well.
Roderick Stewart, the Trojans' all-time leading three-point scorer, rims out, had a tough night at Washington on Thursday. Pruitt went for the overplay. Richesty dodged him, but then the easy look won't fall, and back comes USC. Clark picks up Nick Young, and as he drives to the basket, Lowe reaches in, slaps him, but got a little bit of arm as well as ball. Taj Gibson, the freshman, trying to help the Trojans close strong here on the final day of the regular season.
I think Ivory is going to have trouble on penetration by Young.
Washington State, 2 of 9 from the floor. They were 32% in the first half at the Galen Center, shot 48% in the second, wound up with a 3-point victory. USC 2 of 6 so far. Time for the Pac-10 tournament. Which team keeps alive its dreams of March Madness? Find out Wednesday. First round games get underway at 6:30. Then Thursday, the quarters at noon. Catch the semifinals Friday at 6 p.m. on FSN. Kyle Weaver knows that the Cougars will be playing not only into the Pac-10 tournament next week. They won't play the first day for the first time in a while. They'll also be playing beyond next week into the NCAAs. He is all smiles about that.
Oh, all these guys got to be excited about this. I think Tony's done a great job of keeping the attitude. He said every time we walk on that court, we're the underdogs, and he's tried to keep that going the whole season.
Well, these two guys, Tim Floyd and Tony Bennett, I don't see how they can not be the leading candidates for Coach of the Year in this conference. Tim Floyd has overcome death of his point guard, academic suspension for Gabe Pruitt, overweight for Lod Stewart. There was just really nobody predicting him to be that good. And then Washington State, the same thing. They're predicted last in the conference. That's Coach of the Year stuff.
Weaver got a piece. Floyd has not substituted. Aaron Baines and David Harmeling now on the floor for Washington State. Baines on the near side working the elbow against Taj Gibson. Has been playing well the last couple of games. 14 points against Oregon State, 4 of 8 and 10 against UCLA. But Harmeling streaky and misses another.
You know, Paul, you mentioned Coach of the Year in the Pac-10. I think both these guys are probably mentioned nationally too.
I think so. It's just when you think about what Tony Bennett has done, though, it's a beautiful place up here, but it's still the last place that recruits think of when they think of the Pac-10, or close to the last place. And you know, the glamour school, Arizona, and what's happening down in LA, they're not winning with the best talent. So that reflects right on the coach.
Nobody really understood what change he was going to make with this team when he took over for his dad, Bennett. Defensive principles remain intact, but offensively he has given them some latitude, and it's paid off. Hackett from Young as the shot clock winds down. Baines has the rebound. That is Washington State's 7th, 9 for USC.
You know, Paul, I mentioned they might double team. They did double team the post that time after the timeout. Looks like they changed their. Tony Bennett will change that up. He'll double team for a while, stop, and then go back to it.
Nobody has scored for 3 minutes. Weaver tries to take Stewart to the basket, is shut down, but then fades away, spins, and knocks it down. Kyle Weaver with another.
I'll take you way back. That looked like Earl Monroe.
It sure did. He was just showing off there. That was pretty sweet.
Gibson having a little trouble with Baines, and then Weaver comes to double team, leaves Young alone. Harmeling helps shut him down, and he travels.
Well, he got caught traveling. He should have shoveled it to Lodrick Stewart about 2 seconds before he traveled, and Lodrick was wide open. But he kind of had his mind made up that he was going to shoot that one, I think.
Yeah, here we see Earl Monroe again. Oh, it's Weaver.
That is Earl Monroe. That's pretty good.
That was a great impersonation. You know, he's already got 2 blocks and at least 1 steal. This guy is sneaky good on defense.
He's top 5 fellas in the league in assists, steals, and assist to turnover ratio. What a complete game, too. 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. Lowe knocks it down for 3.
And Tony Bennett's work after class the other day is helping out with Lowe.
Trying to find a way to get his junior point guard from Honolulu off the schneid. Gibson 2 of 2. The rest of the Trojans 0 for 8, although on the play, Gabe Pruitt earns himself a trip to the free throw line. Washington State has scored 5 unanswered points over the last 4 minutes and 15 seconds, mind you. The Cougars' leading scorer, Derek Lowe, with the 3.
It's a deluge of points lately. They're up to 9 already.
Watch the footwork here. He just turns on that inside foot. They work on that kind of stuff every day. All the fundamentals, great shooting.
USC has turned the ball over 3 times. Washington State doesn't turn the ball over very much. 2nd in the country with an average of 10 a game. Cougars have given it up once. Shooting hasn't been a real work of art. 4 of 13 for Washington State. 2 of 10 for SC. As Nick Young comes back on the floor, Daniel Hackett, as we talked about experience, and then Tim Floyd goes young.
There's Dwight Lewis, who's a freshman, Taj Gibson, who's a freshman, and Daniel Hackett, who should be a senior in high school, but he graduated early in order to fill the gap at point guard for SC. So they have 2 freshmen and a pre-freshman out there.
Gibson has made the Trojans only field goals, only 2 of them. Pruitt hits on charity. Washington State has heated up just a little bit from the floor. They have not taken many shots, but they have made their last 4. Pruitt.
They made their last 4 to go 4 for 13. So they were 0 for 9 to start, and the Trojans are 2 for 10. This is a defensive battle all the way.
Pruitt becomes the first Trojan other than Gibson to get onto the score sheet. He had 13 points in Seattle the other night, become the 3rd Trojans player along with Stewart and Young to hit 1,000 for the season. Richesti, a little scrambly, saves it. Baines pays it off.
You know, he gets the job done inside. He's got a nice little hook. He looks a little bit awkward sometimes, but you know, he puts that shoulder into it, and he gets a lot of room to get that hook off.
David Harmeling said before the game that Aaron Baines has really kind of figured out here the last few games which way to go in the low post, how to move and how to finish. He misses a lot, or has missed a lot of short shots, but he's been making those as Lewis goes up, forced into a tough shot by Baines and Harmeling. Weaver puts on the Jets and finishes the break.
I see what you mean about Weaver, Bob. He does a little bit of everything. Plus, he does it with athleticism.
Yeah, well, here he's on Young. This is going to be interesting. Young will get that fadeaway off. Oh, he won't get that.
He'll get fouled.
Yeah, he got fouled. He got the foul, though.
Weaver, a very easygoing guy, junior out of Beloit, Wisconsin. 5 assists a game. Well, rounded it up, but he is 3rd in the Pac-10. But he'll play you defensively as well. Really understands the concept.
I think Weaver surprised the official a little bit there. That was pretty darn good defense. Nick Young made a move and tried to step through. Weaver held his ground, and again, he didn't have to get that call. That was nice defense.
Now, Nick Young had 26 points at Washington on 11 of 15 shooting. That was his first point of the afternoon.
You know, Paul, an interesting thing, and you look at the stats of a team that gets turnovers and steals. Half of the turnovers Washington State causes are steals. It's a high ratio, but you know it's usually a little lower than that. People are just throwing the ball away, and it's a good stat because when you steal it, you've got a much better opportunity to score.
Right, that is significant.
That was a veteran move. Made the freshman leave his feet, stepped inside and scored.
Looked like Steve Nash, didn't it? At least how Nash used to look. That hair flying.
That's a little different look this year, and so is the tattoo on his left leg, but that's a whole nother story. We'll wait on it. Gibson, again, with Baines, the long guy right in front of him. Tough shot. USC has not scored a field goal in better than 5 minutes.
You know, Weaver's not technically their point guard, but he gets more assists than anybody on the team, and doesn't turn it over very often either. He's done everything on that play. Offensive rebound, keeping it alive, set a guy up for a nice shot. He's everywhere.
Chesty wanted a foul call, but that was an unforced error. Stewart gets it back from Young and finishes on the break off the turnover.
That's what you were talking about, Bob. You get a steal and you have a chance to get out there and get a much higher percentage shot than if you grind your offense.
Yeah. And, you know, actually, Weaver does bring the ball up a lot. They'll put Derek Lowe on the baseline running off screens because he's a good three-point shooter. So Weaver, you know, half the time he is the point.
Weaver has the shot fed back to him by Stewart, but takes it back. Nobody from USC collapsed on him, and he makes it pay with the score. Weaver now 3 out of 4, 6 points. He leads all scorers. Check that. Lowe has 7.
You know, Weaver had the presence of mind to let go of that ball when it got blocked. Otherwise, it would have been a jump ball when he came down with it. He let that ball go, picked it up, went in for the layup.
USC is only one of its last 5. Baines turns and scores left-handed.
That's a basketball can't move right there. Classic Mr. Fundamental drop step. Use the left hand. The big fella, they say if you get him on your hip, they'll never get around, and they're right. That was perfect.
And he looked like he was looking on the floor to find out where the footprints were, you know, when they teach you the moves.
Dancing with the Stars will be calling soon.
Gibson responds. Washington State now with possession, and the Cougars have made 8 of their last 10 field goals over the last 7.5 minutes of the game. Pruitt, good read in the overplay. Harmling will just let him go wisely as Pruitt scores his first field goal of the afternoon.
Pruitt's another one of those guys that when he gets a steal, it almost always leads to a layup. He anticipates. Wow, that's a nice move right there.
Yeah, the pace of this game has picked up dramatically.
Richesti with the basket. Taylor Richesti, the transfer out of Tulane University.
We don't watch out. One of these teams is going to get 65 points today.
Baines commits the foul.
Big fella.
Was trying to feed it back to Pruitt, but the official was right on top of it, and so Pruitt will go back to the free throw line.
I think Washington's was right on top of it too, Brian.
How about Tony Bennett's defense, fellas?
Gabe Pruitt again. The open floor.
Taylor Richesti at the other end. Saw something and took it all the way to the rack. Cougars by 6, 7 and change remaining first half in Pullman. Neither one of these teams has lost consecutive games all season long. Somebody will this afternoon. Defense has remained the name of the game on both sides.
And this is good man-to-man. Everybody playing their own man. There you see a hedge by Harmling. Finally, he has to settle for a tough jump shot over a hand.
And here, penetration, they collapse. Lodrick Stewart gets the ball, centers it, 3-on-2 fast break, just like you do in warm-up drills.
Scoring in the paint has been decidedly Washington State's bailiwick this afternoon. 12-6 the advantage as you look at the shooting overall, and again offensive rebounding at the Galen Center in December allowed Washington State 9 more field goal attempts. Pritt back to the line. He's got 3 free throws. Will have 4. He is 1 of 1 from the floor.
Pruitt really has turned the season around for SC this year. He had academic troubles, and he joined the team 2 games before conference started, and they were turning the ball over 19 times a game. And in the conference, they're turning it over 12 times a game since he's taken over at the point guard. And it hasn't even necessarily been considered his best position in college, but he's settled them down and added things defensively. He was a big scorer last year, and scoring has taken second or third place in his game right now, and he's been very valuable.
Calgill looking for something off the deflection off the glass, doesn't get it. Pruitt out for Hackett. Keith Wilkinson had 9 points at Washington, a career high on the floor. He goes to work on the elbow against Calgill, gives it back to Young, tries to turn the corner and scores over Irie Clark. Tough shot, good defense by Clark, but a good finish for Young, his first field goal of the night.
You know, Young gets the edge on everybody, but especially against a guy that's a little bit bigger like Ivory, that's a tough draw to have to guard Young.
At the other end, Young D's up on Clark and forces a bad shot. Wilkinson cleans it up. Lewis into the paint, scores. Got around Weaver. Calgill was just a little bit late, and this is suddenly a tie basketball game.
Yeah, that's another freshman for SC. When Dwight Lewis gets in the game, he looks to shoot. He took that right to the rim, and that's what Dick Bennett didn't like about the UCLA game. They were taking it through the defense right to the rim, and the Trojans finding maybe a little soft spot there.
Well, you know, he's a freshman, so he probably didn't realize how good a defensive player Weaver is. He just took him to the hoop, made a layup.
Calgill coming off of a 10.9 rebound game against UCLA. Take a look at Lewis's handiwork as Calgill just a touch late. And the Trojans have outscored Washington State now 6-love in the last 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
It probably surprised Calgill, too, that anybody could drive around Weaver, so he probably wasn't ready to rotate.
Rochestie, Harmeling, Weaver, Calgill, and Mac Hobson, the sophomore from Detroit. Jefferson High School on the floor a little bit late. He can't stop Lodrick Stewart, who gives USC its first lead. Trojans have now fashioned an 8-point run. Hobson doesn't get enough space off the rub from Harmeling, but in the trees decides to take the shot anyway. Goes up and earns a trip to the free throw line. Mac Hobson early in the year. Wilkinson's foul. Hobson early in the year was in Bennett's starting lineup, but wasn't picking up the defensive principles as much as his head coach had wanted. As we take a look at what Tim Floyd and company have fashioned the last 3.5 minutes. Hobson wound up out of the lineup, didn't play for 7 straight games, but got back in against Oregon State and has been in every game since.
Go ahead, Paul. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say that shot looked like I hope they call a foul because I can't see the rim.
Yeah, I think I was going to say something about that move too. Hackett really should have turned him over to the big guy, and he fouled him from behind, but he had no chance of getting that shot off, or very little chance of converting that play if Hackett didn't bail him out.
Hackett goes to work on Rochestie. Harmeling on the switch with Calgill as Calgill goes to the post and screens Wilkinson so that Hobson can clean this up in transition. David Harmeling is his short.
Well, SC got lucky on that. Dwight Lewis was back and chose to guard the basket and leave Harmeling open. He was just fortunate he missed it. That was a good look, the look that Tony Bennett wanted, I'm sure.
Gibson dribbles between the trees, sets himself up, and then scores again. Gibson with 9 points to lead all scorers on 4 of 6 shooting from the floor. Washington State 0 for 4 from the field the last 3 minutes.
It's funny, that move by Gibson is pretty much the same move that we pointed out the Cougars played pretty good defense on before, and a lot of times great shooter will make even excellent defense not so effective.
Calgill forced along the baseline and goes up with the shot, and he is fouled by Taj Gibson.
You know, Gibson had that one in jail too, and then somebody else.
Cougars have not scored a field goal for the last 3 minutes. Calgill, a 71% free throw shooter. Talked about his numbers Thursday night against UCLA. He had 12 points and 6 rebounds at USC in December. Again, Tony Bennett said that was a big win because they'd had a good non-conference run. They had beaten Gonzaga particularly, but didn't know what it was going to be like once they got into conference play. They go on the road, they lose a tough game to UCLA, but then beat USC by 3, and off they went.
It's amazing what confidence does. You get in the habit of winning games, and it just seems like the games come. The close games, you win them on the road. But if you get, you know, in the rut of losing, it's kind of like what happened to Arizona State this year. It's just no matter what they do, they're not going to get a win. Here's another clear out for Taj, and the Cougars kept it tight and knocked it away.
Bad call. I think that was last off USC, but they retained possession, and Lodrick Stewart, coming off of a less than impressive performance and a less than impressive start here tonight. Started 0 for 3, but he's 3 for 7 now, so give him 3 in his last 4. Lowe works around, finds Baines in the paint. Baines with the gimme putt.
You don't have time to high-five it, do you? You better get back.
Tony Bennett does not look too happy about that.
No.
Just popped up off the bench. Worked too hard to get those points to give up a layup right back within 3 seconds.
And I think the thing that worries Tony the most is something like that will bring his dad out of the stands.
Rochester is long. Calgill finds the rebound. Rochester gets another chance, and he is pounded again. Wilkinson and Gibson were both there, and it is against Taj Gibson. That is his second personal foul. Lodrick Stewart didn't have a great night in his final collegiate game in his hometown, Seattle, but the senior from Rainier Beach High School is 4 out of 8 points, and he is keeping the Trojans on the high side. Lodrick Stewart is a 3-point specialist, but don't forget that overall he's 47% from the floor. Actually, fellas started 0 for 4, so he's made his last 4.
And Paul, I love this play they're running for him. Watch him over there. He sets a pick. Now he's running through the gap. Now they close that door. And if you're a defender, there's no way you're going to get through there.
Yeah, you have to get help on that play. You can't possibly be close enough to those big guys getting shoulder to shoulder. And it's just a sucker play if you try to follow him. You've got to have one of your bigs has to help you either by bumping Stewart or switching out on him.
Yeah, and if you don't want to switch out, the easiest thing is probably just have the big drop into the hole and clog it up so Stewart can't get through either. But you got to be ready for it, because if it just happens, if it catches you off guard, it's difficult.
Fellas, he in conference games leads the Pac-10 49% from beyond the arc. Again, this year he became USC's all-time leading 3-point scorer, but he hasn't taken a shot beyond the arc today. Taking a look at Taylor Rochester from Santa Barbara, California. The sophomore started his collegiate career at Tulane and gets the Cougars within a stick man. Weaver back on the floor for Rochester. So Weaver, Calgill, Lowe, Baines, and Harmeling. Lewis, Stewart. Taking a look at Gabe Pruitt with the ball. Wilkinson on the floor, as well as Rashawn Cromwell now for USC. Nice find inside. Stewart had the advantage on a great feed from Gabe Pruitt.
Well, he beat Weaver on that play. Weaver chased him around the screen, and whenever a guy chases you, you should curl, and Calgill didn't step up and bump him, and it's a classic NBA play that if you don't bump the cutter and he curls, you get a layup like Lodrick Stewart just did. It was a good pass, and it was a better cut.
The two-man game, Weaver and Harmeling. Weaver breaks that long Washington State field goal drought.
He made that one look easy, too. He just took it in, laid it up with the left hand.
Roderick Stewart has scored 6 in a row for SC, 8 of the Trojans' last 10 points. He's working outside now on the high side, guarded by Weaver. Inside, Wilkinson on the feed is called for the charge. Offensive foul against Wilkinson. That is his first 16 foul against USC.
And that comes from defensive recognition. There he was, and as the opposing big man, Cowgill's out there defending. You need to have that big guy ready because it's a team defense. He cannot be out there if the other big man's not ready to rotate. We can't play defense that way.
On that play, Bob, I thought that there were so many things that everybody did right. The Cougars took away the screen and roll by Cowgill jumping out, which gave Wilkinson the opening to go to the basket. When he went to the basket, the other big, Baines, came over because he saw that, and the only problem was if the rolling man, Wilkinson, can't see Baines because he's looking to catch the ball.
Right.
And so if he could have just caught him out of the corner of his eyes, one more pass would have given them a dunk. But everybody did the right thing, and it was Washington State's advantage because of their alert defense.
Derek Lowe in the 1-and-1. He earns another as Gabe Pruitt really deserved better, but was called for the foul after he guarded Lowe. Gave him a nightmare. Got a final score for you. Actually, the final score. Sports Ultimate Nightly Highlight Show. Here, the only national show gives you nothing but wall-to-wall highlights. The FSN final score airs tonight at 11:30 p.m. on FSN. Final scores to Pac-10 today included Washington over UCLA and Seattle, and Arizona bested Stanford on this final day of the regular season of conference play. Young. Back out to Stewart off the reversal. That first three-point shot of the afternoon. Roderick Stewart now has really heated up after starting 0 for 4 from the floor. Stewart with 13 points.
And the steal.
That's why shooters keep shooting.
And off of Derek Lowe as he was being forced out of bounds right in front of the scorer's table. So a heady play on top of that.
You know what, Paul, we mentioned at the game at Washington with USC how some guys don't play as well at home, their hometown, and Stewart had a bad night there. I don't know what his track record was.
Well, yeah, Stewart, he's a great shooter, but sometimes he gets a little streaky, and if he doesn't get more shots, he can have a bad game. I don't think it was being at home up in Washington as much as that just happens to him sometimes. He gets kind of forgotten about in the offense a little bit.
Nick Young extends the Trojans' lead to 5, and
wow, Stewart in his own hands now.
Picking Weaver's pocket, and Weaver with the block as Stewart had eyes for the layup, and then the foul called underneath inside the final minute of the first half at Freehold Court. Brian Davis, Paul Westphal, Bob Weiss. Defense remains our main storyline.
Well, here Stewart picked his pocket, and Weaver said, oh, yeah, well, I'll block your shot then. What a great play by Weaver to run him down and time that. And he knew that Lodrick was left-handed, and he just ran and took the angle to be able to take that left hand away from him.
Nick Young was fouled as he went for the putback. Young, 18 points a game by average, 19 in conference play, but here tonight only 2 of 4, 3 of 3 from the line for a total of 7 points. And the lead is 7 now as Young has scored 4 straight, picking up where Lodrick Stewart had left off. And time is taken. Tony Bennett wants 30 to figure it out. There is roughly a 7-second difference between game and shot clock. Here's how it looks now in the Pac-10. We mentioned the results that we have seen earlier. USC holds the tiebreaker over Washington State should the Trojans win because they beat Oregon twice and Oregon beat the Cougars twice. Arizona took inside position today, beating Stanford.
Well, you know, if SC wins this game, Brian, they win the right to play the two teams that just beat them. The winner of the Arizona State, who just drilled them in Tempe, and Washington, who beat them 2 nights ago. I mean, that's not that big of a prize to win, but it is a win against a nationally ranked team on the road. So the Trojans naturally would like to finish second in the conference, but you know, that tournament, that's not the prize, playing Washington or Arizona State.
Well, I don't know if you can pick a game you want, another team you want to play in this tournament. It's going to be a great tournament.
Well, they have handled Cal and Oregon State a little bit better, a little easier, but there's going to be a lot of games that don't go according to form in that Pac-10 conference tournament.
USC, after the tough start, has shot 52% for the half. The Cougars 43%. Lowe shut down by Lewis. Jump stop goes up and just finds the front end of the rim. Cromwell got him on the way to the basket, and so Derek Lowe will shoot a pair. He is 3rd all-time at Washington State with a .805 career free thrower average. He is 78% this year, a little bit less in conference play as his level of play dropped off a little bit. Ask Tony Bennett, maybe because he's the last 2 years battled foot injuries, never really had a full season. Maybe did he hit a little bit of a wall because he was being asked to play from the very beginning of the season. And it says possible.
They said he was a little ill too, but how about Derek Lowe? 4 years in a row, the player of the year, high school player of the year in Hawaii. I think Mike Bibby may have done that in Arizona 4 years in a row. But have you ever heard of that?
No.
In any other state? That's an outstanding achievement.
You know, I think there's going to be a big possession coming down here now. The way this game has gone, USC stretching it out a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a momentum thing going into the second half. You get a stop, you're going to feel good. You get a score, you're going to feel even better if you're USC.
As Bennett talks over the situation with his guys and the fans get into it here at Friel Court, and boy, they are right on top of you here in Pullman. Washington State from the floor the last 7 minutes, fellas, is 2 of 9. So do the math. They started 10 and 19.
But it's their defense, really. I mean, SC has 38 with a chance to go over 40 in the half. Washington State's only given up 70 points 3 times this year. And after starting out 2 for 10, the Trojans have been shredding them.
So here's Hackett sending Young to the elbow, and Lowe got into him just a little bit, so he's called for the personal. That stops the clock with just under 10 seconds remaining in the first half.
You know, Paul, I think they've done a lot of it. USC's done a lot of this with their defense because they've gotten so many steals where they just run down and score quickly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You see Pruitt, you see Lodrick Stewart coming out on the run, and it's pretty hard to defend against 3-on-2s and 2-on-1s and even one-on-0 runouts.
This is a 1-and-1 off of Washington State's 7th team foul of the half. Hackett is 82% from the line.
Yeah, I'm sure that was not the defense Tony Bennett wanted that time. To foul a guy, you know, 40 feet from the basket with 9 seconds to go. That's
it almost looked like he was taking it.
It did, yeah.
So,
and the Trojans 11 of 12 from the line here in the first half.
And if you're going to foul somebody because they're shooting a 1-on-1, you know, you don't want to make it a guy's 80% shooter. So you're right. I can't think that was planned.
Cromwell in for a little bit of length, replacing Hackett. Bangs to the post in the flush. Just like they drew it up as time expires, and that brings the crowd to their feet. Aaron Baines has started to figure it out here in the latter stages of the regular season. This afternoon, he is 4 out of 4, 8 points to bring the Cougars within 5 at intermission.
And a great drive by Hobson here. It just makes the feed. You know, somebody's got to move over. That gave him a wide open dunk.
So the battle for second place, the Trojans take a 5-point lead to the dressing room. USC on the high side in Pullman.